All right, let's talk about one of the most popular markets out there, over 1.5 goals. You know the one. But here's the thing. We're not just going to talk about picking teams that score a lot. No, we're going way deeper. We're going to break down a real data-driven system that turns what can feel like a simple punt into a proper trading strategy. It's all about going from that feeling of confusion to, finally getting some clarity. So here's the game plan for today. First, we're going to look at a classic trader's dilemma, something I bet a lot of you have felt. Then we'll talk about the massive mindset shift from gambling to trading. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty, finding your statistical edge. Then I'll walk you through a specific in-play strategy called the drip strategy. And finally, we'll cover the one thing that's more important than anything else, discipline and what you should do next.
Okay, let's kick things off with a real-world story. It's about a trader from a Betfair forum who went by the name STV, and his situation is something a lot of people can relate to. See, he was doing all the work. He had this really complex system, but he was learning the hard way that putting in more effort and adding more complexity doesn't always mean you're going to make more money.
And this quote from him, man, it just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? He's basically saying, look, I'm trying, I have a strategy, but I'm losing. Am I even on the right track? It's that feeling of doing what you think is right. You're doing the research, you're watching the games, you have a plan, but you're still losing money. This question is really what we're here to answer today.
So what exactly was going wrong here? Well, his system was complicated. He was in and out of different markets during the same match, trying to create these little insurance bets. But the veterans on the forum pointed something out. All that complexity was actually killing him. Think about it. Every single trade has a cost, right? There's the commission, there's the little price difference called the spread, and when you're doing that over and over in one game, it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Those little insurance bets were just making him lose more money faster. It was a recipe for stress.
So the advice he got wasn't some magic bullet. Nobody gave him a secret indicator or a can't-lose system. The real advice was about something much more fundamental, a total shift in mindset. It was all about moving away from thinking like a gambler who's always just chasing the next win and starting to act like a professional trader who focuses on a process they can repeat day in and day out. And this slide really breaks down that difference. It's huge. A gambler, they're on an emotional roller coaster. Every win is a massive high, every loss is a crushing low. But a trader, they're totally different. They focus on just one thing. Did I follow my plan? Did I execute my strategy correctly? That's it. Because they know if the process is solid and has an edge, the profits, well, they'll come eventually. It's about the long game.
This right here, this is basically the professional's playbook, made popular by a guy named Robert Pardo. It's a never-ending cycle, really. You start with an idea, then you have to write down the rules and stick to them. Then you test it, you optimize it, and only then do you actually start trading it. But it doesn't stop there. You're always monitoring how it's doing and looking for ways to improve. This is the difference between having a lucky run and building real sustainable success. Okay, so we've established that having a process is the how. But what's the what? What is the process actually built on? Well, it's all about finding a real, verifiable statistical edge. That's just a fancy way of saying you've found a pattern, something the market isn't quite seeing, an angle that the odds don't fully reflect. And where do you find that? You guessed it, in the data.
All right, let's look at a really simple but super powerful example. Check out this table. It's from a study on the Turkish Super League, looking at 8 seasons of data. It shows when goals are scored in 15-minute chunks. Just take a look. Do you see a pattern? It's pretty obvious, right? Games aren't static. The goals don't just happen evenly. Things really ramp up as the game goes on. And this chart just makes that trend crystal clear. Look at that. Way more goals in the second half than the first. And that last bar, the final 15 minutes, that's where a huge chunk of the action happens. And it makes sense, right? You've got teams getting tired, managers making desperate changes, more pressure. It all leads to more goals. This simple fact is a powerful edge that we can build a whole strategy around.
But, just knowing when goals are scored is only part of the puzzle. To really get a sophisticated edge, we need to look deeper. We need to measure a team's potential to score. And honestly, the best tool we have for that right now is expected goals, or XG. It's a game changer because it stops asking, did a goal happen, and starts asking a much smarter question. How good was the chance of a goal happening?
And here's why that is so important. XG helps you find the unlucky teams. You know the ones, they're creating amazing chances, their XG is super high, but for whatever reason, the ball just isn't going in the net. To the average person, they just look like a low-scoring team. But the data, the XG, tells you a different story. It tells you their real attacking power is way higher than the results show. And that gap, that's a classic inefficiency in the market. That's where you find value.
Okay, so where do we even start looking for these games? Well, you want to make your life easier, right? The data is pretty clear that some leagues are just goal fests. You look at a league like the Dutch Eredivisie, and historically, a ridiculously high number of their games have over 1.5 goals. So why fight it? Start your search there. It's like giving your strategy a nice tailwind before you even begin.
All right, let's get to the fun part. How do we take all this data and theory and turn it into an actual in-play strategy we can use? We're going to talk about a system called the DRIP strategy. And it's designed specifically to take advantage of what we just learned, especially the fact that as time ticks by in a 0-0 game, the odds get better and better.
So here's how it works. The rules are simple. You've done your homework and picked a game, but you don't bet at kickoff. No way. You wait. If it's still 0-0 at the 20-minute mark, that's when you put in your first bit of stake, say 1/3 of it. Still 0-0 at 27 minutes, in goes another third. And if we hit 35 minutes with no goals, in goes the final third. By dripping your stake in like this, you get a way better average price than you ever could have pre-match. You're using time to your advantage.
Now, getting in is only half the battle. Your exit strategy is just as crucial. So, boom, the first goal goes in, your bet is looking great. But you don't cash out. You wait maybe 2 or 3 minutes for the odds to settle down. Then you place a lay bet, which means you're betting against over 1.5 goals happening for the exact same amount of money you put in. What does this do? It's genius. It creates a risk-free trade. You cannot lose your original stake. If another goal is scored, you win big. If the game ends 1-0, you basically break even. The goal here isn't about grabbing a tiny profit. It's about removing all your risk from the table.
Okay, listen up, because this is probably the most important part of this whole thing. We've talked about mindset, we've talked about finding an edge, we've talked about the drip method, but honestly, none of that matters without this next piece. The single biggest, most unbeatable edge you can ever have is discipline, and that all comes down to how you manage your money.
This number right here is the golden rule, 1 to 5%. That is the percentage of your total bankroll you should risk on any single trade, period. So let's say you have a 200-pound bankroll to play with. A 5% stake means your total risk on one match is just 10 quid. Why is this so important? Because you will have losing streaks. Everybody does. Sticking to small, consistent stakes is the only way you'll survive them and still be in the game to let your profits grow over the long run. And these rules, they are absolutely non-negotiable. Think of them as your psychological armor. They're what protect you from your two biggest enemies in this game, fear and greed. When you stick to a staking plan like this, you take emotion out of the driver's seat. You're not chasing losses. You're not getting greedy after a win. You just accept that losing is part of the game, and you make damn sure that no single bad result can ever wipe you out.
So, there you have it. We've gone on a pretty big journey, right? All the way from the confusion and frustration of our friend Stively to a really clear, actionable framework that you can actually start using. So, let's wrap this up and boil it down to the key takeaways you need to remember. If you remember nothing else, remember these 4 pillars. Number 1, mindset. Stop thinking like a gambler, start acting like a trader with a process. Number 2, edge. Use data, especially XG, to find real value the market is missing. Number 3, method. Use a rules-based system like the drip strategy for your entries and exits. And number 4, and most importantly, discipline. You have to master risk and bankroll management above everything else. And that really brings us to the final point. The strategy itself, the steps. They're pretty simple, right? Anyone can learn them, but the discipline, that's the hard part. That's what separates the people who make it long-term from those who don't. It's having the mental strength to follow your own rules every single time, whether you're winning or losing. So the question I want to leave you with is this. The strategy is simple, but the discipline is hard. Which one will you master?